Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupa Paramahamsa Parivishkachaya Ashtotasa Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananti Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Kantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Gaur Premanandi. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 7, entitled The Schedule Incarnations, text number 47. Please repeat after me. Shasva prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram.
Shasva prashantam abhayam pratibodhamatram.
Shudham samatsat asata paramapmatattvam.
Shudham samatsat asata paramapmatattvam.
Shabdo nayacha puruka Kavam Kriyato
Shabdo nayacha puruka kavam kriyato.
Maya Parati Abhimukecha Vilajamana
Maya parati abhikecha.
Tadvai Padam Bhagavata Paramasya Pumso
Tadvai param bhagavata paramasya pumso.
Brahmeti Yad Vidhu Ajasha Sukham Vishokam
Brahmeti yad vidhu ajasha sukham vishokam.
Shasvat
Shasvat,
Eternal Prashantam without disturbance Abhayam without fear Pratibodhamatram a consciousness opposed to the material counterpart. Shudham, uncontaminated. Samam, without distinction. Sat asataha, of the cause and effect. Paramatmatattvam, the principle of primeval cause. Shabda, speculative sound. Na, not. Yatra, where there is. Puru karakavan, resulting in fruit of action. Kriya ata, for the matter of sacrifice. Maya, illusion. Pareti, flies away. Abhimukhe, in front of. Cha, also. Vilajyamana, being ashamed of. Tat, that. By, is certainly. Padam, ultimate phase. Bhagavata, of the personality of Godhead. Paramasha, of the Supreme. Pumsa, of the person. Brahma, the Absolute. Iti, thus, yet, which. Vidhu, known as. Ajashra, unlimited. Sukham, happiness. Vishokam, without grief. Translation: what is realized as the absolute Brahman is full of unlimited bliss without grief. That is certainly the ultimate phase of the supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead. He is eternally void of all disturbances and fearless. He is complete consciousness as opposed to matter, uncontaminated and without distinctions. He is the principal primeval cause of all causes and effects, in whom there is no sacrifice for fruitive activities, and in whom the illusory energy does not stand. Purport from Srila Prabhupada. The supreme enjoyer, the personality of Godhead, is the Supreme Brahman, or the summum bonum, because of his being the supreme cause of all causes. The conception of impersonal Brahman realization is the first step, due to his distinction from the illusory conception of material existence. In other words, impersonal Brahman is a feature of the absolute distinct from the material variegatedness, just as a light is a conception distinct from its counterpart, darkness. But the light has its variegatedness, which is seen by those who further advance in the light. And thus the ultimate realization of Brahman is the source of the Brahman light, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the summum bonum, or the ultimate source of everything. Therefore, meeting the personality of Godhead includes realization of the impersonal Brahman as realized at the first, in contrast with material inebriety. The personality of Godhead is the third step of Brahman realization. As explained in the first canto, one must understand all three features of the Absolute, Brahman, Paramatma and Bhagavan. Pratibodha Matram is just the opposite conception of material existence. In matter there are material miseries, and thus in the first realization of Brahman there is the negation of such material inebrities, and there is a feeling of eternal existence distinct from the pangs of birth, death, disease and old age. That is the primary conception of impersonal Brahman. The Supreme Lord is the Supreme Soul of everything, and therefore in the Supreme Conception affection is realized. The conception of affection is due to the relationship of soul to soul. A father is affectionate to his son because there is some relationship of nearness between the son and the father. But that sort of affection in the material world is full of inebriety. When the personality of Godhead is met, the fullness of affection becomes manifested because of the reality of the affectionate relationship. He is not the object of affection by material tinges of body and mind, but he is the full, naked, uncontaminated object of affection for all living entities, because he is a super soul or paramatma within everyone's heart. In the liberated state of affairs, the full-fledged affection for the Lord is awakened. As such, there is an unlimited flow of everlasting happiness without the fear of its being broken, as we experience here in the material world. The relationship with the Lord is never broken, and thus there is no grief and no fear. Such happiness is inexplicable by words, and there can be no attempt to generate such happiness by fruitive activities, by arrangements and sacrifices. But we must also know that happiness, unbroken happiness, exchanged with the Supreme Person, the personality of Godhead, as described in this verse, transcends the impersonal conception of the Upanishads. In the Upanishads, the description is more or less negation of the material conception of things, but this is not denial of the transcendental senses of the Supreme Lord. Herein also the same is affirmed in the statements about the material elements. They are all transcendental, free from all contamination of material identification, and also the liberated souls are not devoid of senses, otherwise there cannot be any reciprocation of unhampered spiritual happiness exchanged between them in spontaneous and broken joy. All the senses, both for the Lord and the devotees, are without material contamination. They are so because they are beyond the material cause and effects, as clearly mentioned herein, Sat, Sad Asataha Param. The illusory material energy cannot work there, being ashamed before the Lord and his transcendental devotees. In the material world, the sense activities are not without grief, for here it is clearly said that the senses of the Lord and the devotees are without any grief. There is a distinct difference between the material and spiritual senses, and one should understand it without denying the spiritual senses because of a material conception. The senses in the material world are surcharged with material ignorance in every way. The authorities have recommended purification of the senses from the material conception. In the material world, the senses are manipulated for individual and personal satisfaction, whereas in the spiritual world, the senses are properly used for the purpose for which they were originally meant, namely the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Such sensual activities are natural, and therefore sense gratification there is uninterrupted and unbroken by material contamination, because the senses are spiritually purified. And such satisfaction of the senses is equally shared by the transcendental reciprocators. Since the activities are unlimited and constantly increasing, there is no scope for material attempts or artificial arrangements. Such happiness of transcendental quality is called Brahma Sukham, which will be clearly described in the 5th canto. Om Nagantam Randaja Gananjana Shalakaya Shakshrimanatamyana Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpatarupascha Kripasundave Vaja Patitamam Pavanavyo Vaishnavo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. I pray for all the blessings of the devotees. So there's mention in the purport here about the impersonal Brahman and a bit about the path of understanding the Lord within the heart. And there are 3 aspects to realise Krishna. It's explained in the Bhagavad Gita. There is Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti Shapyate, which means there is impersonal Brahman, which is the energy of the Lord. There is Paramatma realisation, which is the Lord within the heart, the super soul. And there is Krishna. And the impersonalists, they try to extinguish any opportunity for a relationship with Krishna. And the yogis, they're dissatisfied with meditating on Krishna within the heart. But as devotees, we only want to serve and please Krishna. And the impersonalists and the yogis, they don't achieve full satisfaction in their attempts for realisation. And we understand that Shukadeva Goswami, he's one of our acharyas, and when he was conceived, he was a liberated soul before he was born, even within the womb of his mother. And he was so liberated that the fact that when we take birth in a womb, usually material nature forces us to come out after 9 months. We have no choice. But Shukadeva Goswami was a liberated soul, so even within the womb, material nature couldn't force him out. He actually stayed in the womb of his mother for 16 years, a long time. But material nature couldn't force him out. He was, independent. And his father was concerned, Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva, we understand, wrote the Vedic literatures, and he wanted his son to come out for a purpose. And so he couldn't request him to come out, so he went to Dwarka and asked Krishna personally to come down and request his son to come out the womb. So Krishna went to the ashram of Vyasadeva and he spoke to Shukadeva Goswami in the womb. And he reassured Shukadeva Goswami, because he had a fear that if he came out into the material world, he would get consumed by the material energy or influenced. And Krishna reassured him that he wouldn't, so then Shukadeva Goswami appeared. And being a liberated soul, he came out of the womb of his mother. Being a liberated soul, he didn't look back at his mum and dad and became attached to them. He just walked off into the forest. Bit of a shock for the mum and the dad. And Vyasadeva was calling out to his son, but he didn't pay any attention. So later on, Vyasadeva, because he had a purpose for Shukadeva Goswami, and that was he sent his disciples out to the forest, right, to recite some verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam to get the attention of Shukadeva Goswami, to try and change his heart a bit. And one of the verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam is called a mercy verse, and it's a whole Bhakti Yam Stana Kala Kutam, And it's explained that Krishna's mercy is just so magnanimous that Baka, his sister, Putana, she put poison on her breast and she went to kill Krishna, right? Pretended to be a nurse. And Krishna, understanding this, he didn't kill this demon Putana, but he gave her liberation back to Goloka Vrindavan as a nurse. He took her intention of service and gave her a high position in the spiritual world. And Shukadeva Goswami was hearing this, and they quoted another verse of disciples, and it was explaining Krishna's beautiful form and his features and his qualities. And they were explaining that the disciples were reading to Shukadeva Goswami that he wears a peacock feather adorned in his hair. He has the Vajayanti flower garland. He wears a Kaustubha mani, and he has these blue flowers. I think they're called Kinikara flowers, and he puts in his ears. And he wears a yellow cloth, like brilliant like lightning. And he walks into Vrindavan and he's just enchanting everyone by his beautiful dancing. So when Shukadeva Goswami heard this, he's an impersonalist, his heart changed. And immediately he went back to his father Vyasadeva in the ashram and heard Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all about the pastimes of Krishna and the qualities and personality of Krishna. And Dhruva Maharaj as well. I mean, Dhruva Maharaj, we understand he's one of our primary teachers in the Srimad Bhagavatam through his story that's told. And he went to the forest, right, to do meditation like what the yogis do. And he wanted to search out for Krishna in this way, but we understand that Narada Muni was sent by Krishna to give instruction to Dhruva Maharaj through performing this yoga process. And through the mercy of Narada Muni, when Dhruva Maharaj was deep in his meditation and he was seeing Krishna within the heart, because that's the goal of the yogis. The impersonalists, they want to merge into the energy of the Lord, and the yogis want to see Krishna within the heart. And due to the mercy of a Vaishnava called Narada Muni, when he saw Dhruva Maharaj, the Lord within a heart, the Lord then appeared. Actually, Dhruva Maharaj lost his meditation. When he was meditating the Lord within the heart, the Lord disappeared, but then he manifested himself personally outside of Dhruva Maharaj, naturally attracted to serving Krishna. And this is our process actually. If we follow the impersonal path or the path of the yogis, we're not going to be fully satisfied. It's only through devotional service, because that's our nature, and this is explained in the purport here. It's a long purport. Well, it's explained that actually real affection, as explained in the purport, is actually come through soul to soul. Right? And it's not done through an impersonal way or through the yogis, it's done through bhakti, which means that we understand Krishna as a supreme soul, and we also are an individual soul within a body, and through the process of service that affection is awakened. And this is also typified by Gopakumar. When Gopakumar, this is in the Brihat Bhagavatamrita, he's on his journey back to Godhead, and he's an innocent cowherd boy. He's from Vrindavan, and he was in Mahaloka, and he wanted to visit Tapaloka, where they do meditation, what the yogis do. So he chanted his mantra. He didn't need a visa or to travel through, with cars and planes. He just chanted mantras, and he could go wherever he wanted in the universe. So he chanted a mantra and ended up in Tapaloka, and that's where they do meditation. And there he saw the four Kumaras and other great yogis, and they're all deep in meditation and they're in samadhi. So Gopakumar rocked up there, and he didn't know what to do. He's used to playing with cows and enjoying in this way. And he tried to get the attention of some of the yogis, but they weren't conscious of their external surroundings, so they didn't ignore him. They just didn't know he was there. They were meditating on the super soul within the heart. And one of the yogis there, they saw the distress or the difficulty Gopakumar was having. So he went to Gopakumar and he tried to teach him the science of yoga. And Gopakumar, being a pure devotee, a bhakti, he couldn't understand. He couldn't quite accept this yoga process, and therefore he wasn't satisfied. And his goal was actually go back to Vrindavan and serve Krishna and serve the devotees there. And it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, actually the Srimad Bhagavatam, why this takes place, why the yogis in persons aren't satisfied. And it's explained, Yama Dibi Yuga Patai Kama Loba Mukumahu Mukunda Sevaya Yadva Taratmana Shamyati. It explained that it's a fact that by practicing the mystic yoga system, right, one may get relief from the disturbances caused by desire and lust, but it's not enough to give satisfaction to the soul. Real satisfaction to the soul is derived from service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And that's what's explained, just what I mentioned in the purple here. Real affection and love can only take place between the soul and the Supreme Soul. And we had our service opportunity in the spiritual world at some point. And that's where our relationship was really fully manifest. But we chose to be independent, and now we come into the material world. And Bhagavad Sri Prabhu gave a class just the other day, and he pointed out a verse, which I'm going to speak now. Itcha devesha samudhenha dvandava mohena bharata sava bhutani samoham saga yante parantapa. He says, I see in Bharata, I can't go the fight. All living entities are born into delusion, bewildered by the dualities arisen from desire and hate. So we come into the material world and we get covered by these dualities. One is desire, to try and be Krishna, and the other one is hate the instructions of Krishna, or Bhagavad Sri says hate Krishna. But my spiritual master takes it a step further and he says hate the instructions of Krishna, because my spiritual master points out, actually Srila Prabhupada points out, that he translated the Bhagavad Gita and he called it as it is, because he didn't change anything that Krishna wanted to be presented. He presented Krishna's words. And if we read Bhagavad Gita, naturally we become a lover of Krishna. And we can see Prabhupada's quoted as saying many thousands of people by reading his Bhagavad Gita have become lovers of Krishna. So if we don't want to love Krishna and we want to try and be Krishna, then we have to hate his instructions. And by doing this we end up with a material body. It's not a good deal. And I had this experience when I was young actually. In the spiritual world everything's provided. We have all the facilities for enjoyment. Everything's given for our service to Krishna, but when we come to the material world, even as children we get a similar experience. We get our food on the table, we get all our clothes provided, we get presents given, we get all our toys that we can play with, but there comes in a point in our lives where we want to be independent of this nice situation. And I can remember when I was 16, I kind of wanted to be independent of my parents and kind of make my way in the world, and I joined the Navy. And I was just happy to get away from home and do my own thing. And I can remember going to the recruiting office and they said, well, what do you want to do, son? And I don't know, what do you got? So they showed me a list of occupations, and it had the top occupation and top pay level and all the different occupations in between, and the bottom occupation and the bottom pay level. And I just looked at it and thought, I want the top one. I had no interest. It was radio and satellite communications. And I said, I just want to enjoy, I want money. And then, so I joined the Navy. In the first 3 months, I did my basic training, and it was like lockdown. We couldn't go out for 3 months. You can imagine having all these 16 and 18-year-olds that just want to have fun and be independent of their parents, and we're kind of locked in for 3 months with each other. So I can remember on the Friday afternoon before we were allowed to go out and party. That was the intention. And the captain called me into his office and he goes, sit down, sailor. And I went, I didn't go this, I went, yes sir. And I got a letter from your mum, he says. And I go, what? A letter from my mum? And I go, you got the right person? And he goes, yeah, this is Theo. Yeah, I'm Theo. And he goes, I've got to read you the letter, And so he read the letter and it said, my dear sir or ma'am, our Theo, he's an innocent boy. We haven't let him go anywhere or experience anything in the world. We've kept him free from any influence. And now he's joined the Navy, we want you to do the same. Don't let him go out. Don't let him party. And I was shocked. I could feel this. Actually, the first thing that come to mind is, hey, I'm just doing what you told me to do, Mum and Dad. You show me by your behaviour that you work hard, you get money and you enjoy. And I'm trying to do the same thing. And I thought, no, I felt with myself, no, I can't go out. My parents have, captured me again. And then, so the captain goes, all right, son, what do you want to do? Do you want to go home and be a mummy's boy? Do you want to go, what mummy wants you to do, and mummy will do your ironing and cook for you? And I felt, no, I don't want to do this. And he goes, well, do you want to be a man? And I go, yeah, I want to be a man. Do you want to make your way in the world and do what you want to do? I said, yeah, I want to be a man. So he got the letter and he threw it in the bin. He goes, "Go out, sailor, and have a good time, make your way in the world, enjoy." And I went, yeah. Now it felt like mukti. And I was thinking, my ever well-wisher captain, you know what's best for me. So then we come into the mature world and we leave a nice situation in the spiritual world where everything's provided and we have nice love. And we come into the mature world and it's called pavaga. And pavaga, it means we're afflicted by 5 types of things in the material world. And there's pa, ba, and ma. And pa means when we come to the material world, we have to work hard. And pa. And when we work hard, we faina, which means foam. We start to foam at the mouth because that's what hard work does in the material world. And then we experience ba, which is disappointment because we work so hard and there's no equal kind of reciprocation with the work that we do. We do this much work and we get this much result. So people get disappointed. And when we put our hopes in the material world to kind of, get what we want out of it and we don't get what we want, we get disappointed, which is ba. And the next thing, we work so hard and we get to the age of 70 and what's next is ma, which is mittu or death. And it's a real disappointment. Now they're making people work till they're 70 or 80 years old. And this is the nature of the material world. And this causes distress within people because it's not natural, for the soul to be in a body and work hard like this. So there are 4 types of people who would come to Krishna consciousness and surrender or begin to surrender. And one of them is the distressed. And that's usually because we have to work so hard in the material world and we can't enjoy so much. And the other 2 are atati, which are the desirers of wealth. They approach Krishna. And there is jigasu, the inquisitive. They want to know what's, more than what we're doing in the material world. They want to inquire. They begin to inquire something else. And then there's a jnani, and they're really kind of seeking for knowledge. But the one we're focusing on is the distress. Now, who was distressed before they came to Krishna consciousness? I'll put 2 hands up. And who, after practicing Krishna consciousness, is still distressed? What? I'm surprised at that, but the process usually is that we don't stay distressed when we practice Krishna consciousness. We become more happy. That's the usual thing. And it's explained here in the purport that the senses of the living entity, he's given another chance, all right, to go back to the spiritual world, but he has to accept authority and also purification. So Krishna, if we do want to return back to the spiritual world when we get too distressed, Krishna will send a spiritual master. And I just gave the example of Dhruva before. Dhruva was distressed. Dhruva Maharaj is one of our teachers. And he wanted to search out Krishna. And Krishna sent him a spiritual master. And this is our process actually. We can't go back to the spiritual world without, approaching and surrendering to a spiritual master. And surrender actually means, it doesn't mean falling on the ground and surrendering our lives. It also means it's a process of purification. And this is explained in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's explained, Ado Shvara Tata Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya Tato Anatta Nivritisa Tato Nishta Vishishtata. So in the beginning, like what we're doing now, we have a bit of faith that this process is good for us. And by that faith, it develops to a point where we get the association of the devotees, and this is really encouraged. And we can see in the community how nice it is to have the association of devotees because they encourage us in our spiritual life. And when we get more encouraged in spiritual life through the association of devotees, we realise the importance of accepting a spiritual master. And when we do accept the shelter of a spiritual master, the spiritual master isn't just something which is like a label we get. The reason why we approach a spiritual master is because we need guidance. In the material world we failed very miserably because no one takes guidance on how to live their lives in the material world, and we all got defeated. That's why we came to Krishna consciousness. That's one prerequisite for taking our spiritual life, is because we admitted defeat. Right? It didn't work out for us. So we accept the spiritual master, and the spiritual master, he guides us in our devotional life. And one of the difficulties that we have in spiritual life in terms of surrender is that we go through this stage called anatta nivritti, and this is what the spiritual master helps us through. It's anattas are things which are in our heart, which are very difficult to get out, and they cause a lot of difficulty in devotional service. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he explains in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he elaborates on some of these anattas, and I've just pointed out 5 ones that he's mentioned which cause us difficulty. And not only do they cause us difficulty, but they can lead us to try and be independent of Krishna, which is why we came into the material world. And the first one is called utsaha-mayi. Utsaha-mayi means false confidence. So we need confidence in spiritual life. It's explained in the Nectar of Instruction by Rupa Goswami. Utsahan nishayat deyat. So we need enthusiasm, confidence and patience. These are very good to have in our devotional life. But this confidence he's talking about is a natural consequence of when we perform devotional service, we naturally begin to learn about Krishna and we become confident in serving him. But this utsaha-mayi, which is called false confidence, it comes from the false ego. It actually means that I've mastered devotional service, and it comes from I feel like but I'm puffed up with enthusiasm. And the problem with this in devotional life is that we don't usually accept authority when we're puffed up, because we think we know everything. And that's a problem in spiritual life, because we're in a guidance culture. At every step in our devotional life, we need to take guidance. And the next one is called Gana Tarala, which means sporadic endeavour. It actually means we're fired up and then we're extinguished. We get up early in the morning for a few mornings and then we sleep in for the next week. We don't see the devotee. It's called diluted, condensed, thick and thin. And this is just a symptom of being new in Krishna consciousness. It's natural. But this is a stage which we need to work through, because it's not a stable situation to perform bhakti, being up and down like a roller coaster. The next one is called Vayudha Vikalpa. Vikalpa means uncontrolled or random. So in devotional service, we need to make a decision on what we want to do in life, in our spiritual life, and that decision will give us a clear direction to go. So Vayudha Vikalpa, which means indecision, it means that we neglect our spiritual practices very easy, because we can't decide what to do. We don't know whether we want to go here in our spiritual life, or do this service, or go to this community, or maybe go down the village, and not even the village, like go to Byron Bay and enjoy this way. But it's difficult, because I can explain a difficulty that I had in my life going through this indecision stage. And I was a brahmachari and I needed to get married. And I can remember I was just couldn't function. I didn't know whether I wanted to go this way or that way. And I was walking around just going, do I want to get married or not want to get married? Like this. And it wasn't very good for my spiritual life. And a devotee came up to me and he goes, "Hey Prabhu, you're going to be a brahmastra by continuing this." And a brahmastra is like a bomb, so I was about to explode. And devotees were noticing. I just thought it was just natural to walk around being in a bewildered condition, thinking about this. But the devotee said, no, you've got to actually make a decision. And the opposite of vikalpa is sankalpa. Sankalpa means an intention, a decision to do something. So I made a decision to get married. It doesn't mean when we get married we're going to be peaceful and satisfied. But at least we can follow one direction and be happy in that way. And that's very good for spiritual life. And the next one I found very interesting is Vishaya Sagara. This is another anatta. And it's called combat with Maya. And Prabhupada actually, he defined this combat with Maya as a fight against sense gratification. So when we take up spiritual life, right, we're actually fighting against sense gratification. And a devotee, he sent me a message just illustrating Prabhupada's mood and what we should actually see Maya as. And this is a letter from Prabhupada to Tamal Krishna Goswami. He says, "Most of you will fall. I'm in a war with Maya and the material energy, and I need leaders. It is called in wartime battlefield commission. There are no qualified leaders, but someone has to lead the charge. So you take every fifth man. Now you're lieutenant of the squad. He really is a private, but we make him lieutenant for the day and he leads the charge. It is to be understood that you are not sufficiently equipped for this fight with Maya, and most of us will go down. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada to Mahapuruša Goswami. So Prabhupada actually understood how it's a big fight with Maya, and particularly to try and give up sense gratification. And if we're not careful, there's a thing called submarine devotee. And I don't know if you've heard of this, my spiritual master came up with this. He says when we get attacked by Maya, and I use the example that I get influenced by this, we get on our little device, whatever it is, computer and phone, and Maya tells us to do this, check out this on the internet. And it's not associated with Krishna. And we think, yeah, I'll enjoy this a little bit, and I'll just kind of watch it a bit or explore this, and I'll hold it there. And later I'll come back up and do my devotional service. So the submarine devotee means like a submarine, it just goes down a bit. It takes on a bit of water and it goes down 500 feet and it holds there. And then Maya attacks again the devotee, and next thing you know we're watching movies and we haven't done our rounds or read, even though we want to. And then we think, oh yeah, I'll just hold it there and then I'll come back and do my chanting later. So the submarine goes down another 1,000 feet. And before we know it, we're on our phone or our computer all day and we haven't come back up and done our chanting. And for some people, it seems like a funny thing, but some people don't come back to devotional service for years. They get totally distracted. And just like the submarine, it's very hard, right, to come back up to the surface after neglecting our spiritual life and being influenced by Maya. And the next, the anatta, which Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains, is niyama akshama, which means inability to hold vows. And vows are very important because when we take initiation, we vow to follow the 4 vows, the 4 principles of devotional service. And the good thing about following a vow is like an intention to improve our devotional service. And it sets goals. And one good thing about setting goals and having intentions to improve our devotional service is that we rely on Krishna. Because usually those things are things that we don't normally want to achieve or not normally achieve, but we're setting the benchmark higher, right? So we're trying to improve our devotional service to a high level. So we require Krishna's mercy to do this. And Krishna helps. He says, Ananya chintayanto mam, ye jana payapashtate, tesham nitya viyuktanam, yoga shemam baham yaham. He says that whoever worships me with love and devotion, right, meditating on me, my transcendental form, to them I carry what they lack and I preserve what they have. So we have an intention to improve our devotional service. Krishna will help. He'll come to the rescue and he'll help us raise our own standard in devotional service. And if we don't set intentions and vows, then the natural tendency is to go backwards in devotional service. The next and last anatta that Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions is enjoying the waves. Now in devotional service, bhakti is like an ocean, and on the top of the ocean there's waves. And for a lot of us, we won't get influenced by this anatta because it's usually for people that get like a good position in devotional service. They get a lot of wealth, like followers or disciples, and they forget about the ocean of bhakti, and they try and enjoy these things that come with these positions like wealth, facility, money, and they get carried away with this, and they forget about, these are all supported by the ocean of bhakti. And this can cause a problem. This can be a big distraction in a devotee's lives. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur, that he explains that these anattas, which I've mentioned, they're like weeds. And just like in a garden, I've got a garden now, and the weeds are just like growing incredibly fast with all the rain. So if we get influenced by these anattas while performing devotional service, Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions it's like pouring water on the weeds, because these anattas are like weeds. And what happens when the weeds get the watering and our bhakti creeper doesn't? Well, the weeds grow and the bhakti creeper, suffers, and the weeds take over. And therefore it causes so many problems in our devotional life. So in order to see properly again and use our senses in Krishna's service, we need to go through this process of purification, but we need help from Krishna. And we just had the month of Kartik, and the Kartik's a very special month, and the pastime with Krishna being chased by Mother Yashoda is very significant because it teaches us how to rely on Krishna and endeavour in devotional service, because Krishna was getting chased by Mother Yashoda because he broke some pots of yoga and is running away, and Mother Yashoda is chasing him, and he could see that actually she was very determined in her service for him. So Krishna allowed himself to be captured by Mother Yashoda. And she tried to bind him with some ropes to a wooden grinding mortar, and it's said that the rope was always short, 2 inches or 2 fingers, and it represents one of the fingers endeavour, and the other finger represents Krishna's mercy. So in our endeavour for spiritual perfection, we need to put everything into it, and not only that, but we require Krishna's mercy, right? And if we endeavour in our attempt to purify ourselves, right, this is one of the most important ingredients. We need to, be ready for Krishna's mercy and act for that. And surrender also means surrender from sinful life. And being in the material world, we have a debt. Right? Not only do we have to purify ourselves, but we also need to become free from our debt. And has anyone been in a hotel before? Rented a hotel room? Yeah, when you go into the hotel room, what do? You get like a mini bar. And the first thing that people want to do when they go to the mini bar is raid it. But they don't think that they're going to have to pay for the things that they take out of the mini bar. And when they check out of the hotel room, right, the cleaners or the clerks, they come in and they calculate what's been taken out of the mini bar. Right? It's like usually it's chips and alcohol, biscuits, chocolate, all the essentials you need. But we don't understand that the material world's a mini bar. All right? So the living entity, we come into the material world and we just raid the mini bar. Right? And the hotel rooms, we don't know how many hotel rooms we've been in. The hotel room is considered like a body. Right? So we occupy the body and we just raid the material world, but we don't understand that at the end of our lives, we get the bill. Right? And the bill is karma. And that karma forces us to come back into another material body. And there's no way we can pay this debt. And I suppose the reality is if we can't pay the debt, then who can? And it's explained that Krishna is so kind, he explains in the Bhagavad Gita that he will help us pay this debt. Right, from all the sinful activities, all the mini bars we've raided. And he says, Sava dhammam prikchaja mam ekam shavanam bhaja. He says that you just surrender to me. Right? You take up the spiritual process under the guidance of a spiritual master, and I'll clean up your mess. I'll clean up all the sinful reactions you've accumulated while being in the material world. So this is Krishna's mercy. And by doing this, we not only show gratitude to Krishna, but he will allow us return to the spiritual world. And it's explained in one of the purports here that our senses in the material world, they're used to being used for sense gratification. But when we surrender to Krishna and our senses become purified, we go back to the spiritual world and we attain a spiritual body. And we use our senses what their purpose is for. And in the end of the purport here, then we can experience Brahma Saukyam. And Brahma Saukyam is called transcendental happiness. And this is what we're searching for, is this happiness, and we can't get it in the material world. That's why we have to go through this process of purification and go back to the spiritual world. And this is what the impersonalists and the yogis miss out on. They can't use their senses, right, in the service of Krishna. That's why they're not fully satisfied. And I'm running out of time here, so I'll just finish the class there. I've just left a few minutes for questions. If anyone would like to ask any questions, please keep the questions simple and I'll try and answer them. And any questions, please? Pastime it is, it seems. She endeavoured and then Krishna was obliged to give his mercy to her. But we shouldn't consider it's going to be automatic. I mean, otherwise we might not take the endeavour so seriously. So I think we should always endeavour in our devotional life considering it's not automatically going to come. We're going to have to work hard for it. And then, we should pray for the mercy that it will come. And suppose praying for the mercy, not expecting it to come automatically, by praying for it, then we can increase our dependence upon Krishna for it, which is the most essential thing, because in that pastime, that's what Krishna reciprocated with, not just her hard work, but because she became dependent upon Krishna. That's what obliged him then to give the mercy. Is that okay?
Just thinking about this concept that also same point about the rope, the two fingers, and mercy of Krishna and Ananda. This is like a very serious theological debate within Christianity. Is it by grace alone that we're saved from our sins, or is it by our endeavors? And the theologians have been arguing about it for like hundreds of years in Christianity. And there's whole different sects that, like Lutheranism, really focuses on grace, and Catholicism is more about your endeavor and repentance. And within Krishna consciousness, it's just perfectly synthesized. That it's both. It's both. And that's what I find. It's just a comment that within Krishna consciousness, all these theological points of all the other religions are spoken about so nicely and so precisely.
It's a nice point. I was thinking if we could always invite the Christians and other people from religions to come for Kartik here, and we offer the lamps and we hear the prayers, particularly the translations, and I'm sure reading the translations are so sweet and purifying. I'm sure if they come in contact and listen to these, it might, give them a better understanding that it is, our endeavour and Krishna's mercy ultimately. So thanks for that point.
It seems like brahmachari life, and then you sort of stop reading the minibar.
I think it's on.
Like in the ashram life, brahmachari, you stop reading the minibar. But it seems like, grihastha life is more shades of grey, especially having children, and it seems like it's you may experience that you're sort of reading the minibar again, like letting the senses run a bit wild and thinking, oh, it's alright, I'm a devotee. Just look at the phone a bit, all this stuff on the phone or the TV, watch movies, eat karmic grains, etc., etc. And it seems to be, in the consciousness, a bit of justification that, well, it's alright, it's not too bad. I'm a devotee, I'm still practicing my Krishna consciousness. And we're sort of, maybe there's that feeling also that, I'm not getting any reaction for this because I'm a devotee. So maybe, you've got some realization you'd like to share at this point.
Every devotee has to accept responsibility for their own participation in bhakti, and the more we put into our devotional service, the more we get out. As it's explained, as all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. And if we get the right association as well, this seriousness in our devotional service, it'll manifest to a greater degree. So whether we're brahmachari or brahmacharini or grihastha, the most important thing is to really solidify our practice with good association with those who are serious. If we associate with other people who are a bit, lax in their devotional service, then we'll get influenced that way. But if we associate with devotees who are very seriously practicing devotional service, then particularly with senior devotees, we can see, the senior devotees who practice very seriously, they're very good association. We can see the results of them performing devotional service very seriously. And if we take on their association, we take on their qualities. And they're serious in devotional service. So ultimately, material energy is very strong. We shouldn't be hard on ourselves that we get influenced by Maya, because we've been in the material world for many millions and millions of births. So, but at least we're trying to situate ourselves in Krishna consciousness and practice bhakti. But ultimately we should always try and come to a higher standard. And we don't want to get to the end of our lives still looking at the mobile phone and looking on the computers, you know. We don't want to be thinking about this when we leave our body. There's got to be a point in a devotee's life where they really try and put an end to these things and then really aspire to go back and back out of the material world, because at the end of our life these things are going to pop up, these attachments and these anatas, and that's what will cause us to come back into another material body. And we don't want that. Whether it's a man's body, or a woman's body, or a dog's body. So did that answer your question? Nice question. And any more questions, or is that it? Grantharaj, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ki Jai. Thanks for your patience, everyone. Very encouraging.